Greetings and welcome to Align, Shine, Prosper on this full moon lunar eclipse, June 15th, 2011. So, Aliyah, we have two paths we can go down here. You have a social vision and you have a vision for us as individuals. And I would really like to start with the social vision, and either we'll incorporate the individual as we go, or we'll make sure that we make time for that at the end. Does that sound like something you'd like to do? Is that okay with you?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Go ahead.
Okay. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to start with your vision of humanity and what you mean by the three-tiered plan. This is your vision, right?
Yeah, I'll give you a little background on how that appeared in my life.
Okay.
I started out as an artist, and I really had no clue I could do anything else, and so I got accepted in art school in Paris, and I told my parents when they were reticent about letting me go that I couldn't do anything else. That was the only thing I could do, was create art. And so they let me go. And, of course, throughout my life I found that I could do other things. One of the things that just amazed me is that as I began to open as an artist, I found that I could port this ability, this openness, to other things in my life. And so I've always had this dual path, working on personal development and creativity. And so I discovered that I could do all these things, and it was primarily because my mind was opened. So I kind of visualize that as like if you think of a closed fan, that's where, most of us are because of society, the way we've been programmed. And our minds are really meant to be open, like an open fan. And when an open fan can receive more information from the universe. And it's always there. There's all this creative stuff is our birthright, which we're supposed to be. And once we open up as individuals, then all of society changes. So it's like a domino effect, And all it requires is that, we have the courage to open up. And that courage is not really a lot in the beginning. It's just, it might be a lot in the beginning, but as you open up, you discover that there's so much more to be had, so much more out there. And as you open up more and more, you discover that you become unlimited. And it's not because you're becoming unlimited, you're taking away your limitations. So most of what I do as a coach is I help people take away their blocks to their own limitlessness. And most of those limits are put in place by the definitions that we have, the definitions of reality, even the words themselves. We exist in a world of concepts. And so as we start to exit the concepts and exit the stories and exit the limitations and exit the definitions, we then start to understand that we have this incredible ability to, we're like these malleable creatures. There was this, I don't know if you ever watched Star Trek, but there was a Star Trek Deep Space Nine where in this version of Star Trek, there was a being that was a shapeshifter. And he used to crack me up because his way of he would appear to be human. He had made his appearance human, molded his appearance in sort of a humanoid shape. But when he would go to bed at night, he would dissolve into his bucket. He had a little bucket he would put himself into. He would become like this protoplasm and go into this bucket. And honestly, that's the way humans are. We are so adaptable. We are so fluid. And by our nature, we're that way. And once we wake that up, everything will change, and it will change overnight. Once there's sufficient amount of people that are woken up. And that waking up is just simply a matter of, it's not work. It's really play. And that's what I wanted to say when you were talking earlier. We were talking about, light workers. And one of the things that comes to me spontaneously, and it comes back many times, but it came again today when you were talking, when we talked earlier today, that we need to lighten up. That the whole thing about being a light worker is to lighten up. And when we lighten up, when we start to laugh, when we start to be light in terms of our energy, in terms of our expectations, in terms of our not having judgments, in terms of playing, then we become lighter in terms of vibration as well. And our whole lives look different. So that lightening up is really important. So it's really, really important, especially right now, to have fun. And I'm talking about active fun. I'm not talking about passive fun where you go and you watch a movie, although that's okay. But I'm talking about active fun where you actually play. And what creativity really is what I call divine play. It's being in your divinity as being. It's being in your highest self to play. And I can recognize it in my clients when I release them to play. I give them permission to play. It's one of the simplest things I do for them, but one of the most profound. And what they end up doing is they come back and their whole life has changed. Well, it was a simple thing. I told them. I gave them permission. And everybody kind of needs that permission because we've been told we have to work. And we've told that, we have to work to get things. We have to work to make our lives better. We have to work even as light workers. No, even the word light workers is maybe erroneous. No, we have to think, how would we term that? We're light players. You can feel the difference when you change a word, from light workers to light players, from working to play. The idea, the feeling, the vibration is completely different. And you can change things at a very base level when you turn a phrase. So
you also shift your vibration, because, if the word work comes with, the connotation of, sweat and, labor, and when you use the word play, right away it changes the whole dynamic. I feel the whole body changes.
You feel your whole body change. You feel, and I recognize this because I spent years as a teacher. I ended up, I taught gymnastics for a while, and I taught design at art schools in New York City. And so I'm teaching, design, I'm teaching college-level students. And one of the things I recognized when, people would, we're learning software, we're learning things that are actually kind of hard, not just software, but some of my classes were about programming. I taught people how to program games and things like that. And one of the things that I discovered in myself, that when I saw something as work, I already had an obstacle to it. But when I saw it as play, I flowed into it and flowed with it, and it wasn't hard to learn things. And teaching adults is different from teaching children. A child, want to have to do repetition, but you also have to involve them in play. And adults have been learned to work to learn, right? And one of the things that adults need is they need to see a purpose in what they're playing, But one of the things about real creativity, which I expose in my book, I define in my book as there's two basic forms of creativity on one level, and that is you have pure creativity and applied creativity. What most of us think of as creativity is applied creativity. What is real creativity, what makes us sing, what makes us dance, what makes us feel alive is pure creativity. And pure creativity is creativity done for the sheer joy of creativity. There is no purpose to it. There is no goal in it. There is no monetary value in it. Once you strip that away, you're playing like a child. And when you play like a child, you have the youth and the exuberance and the openness of a child. And at that point, you're really creative. And all artists, every single one, what is at the base of their art is that ability to go back to that spot.
Nice.
I don't care how sophisticated their art is, because some of that art is very sophisticated, but underneath it is a sense of play. And that sense of play is the lodestone, that's the touchstone of their work. So on a societal level, applied creativity is everything else. Even design, which I do, I'm a designer. A design has a goal, right? I have to work with a client. It has to be a certain format. It has to be marketed to a certain group of people. They might need a logo that's a certain color, or they already have a logo. So I have to work within parameters. I have to work within a goal and a monitor and a budget, and it has to return money, and, I sell it for a certain amount of money, and da-da-da-da-da. Okay, right. So all of that takes, you can imagine, doesn't that sound like it's lost all its fun?
Yes, it's draining.
It's really draining. And so you can use your emotions to determine whether or not, as a type of emotional guidance system, a navigation system, find out how much you really should be doing something. Because really right now, the whole thing right now is to step into play as much as possible, step into fun as much as possible. And everything can be fun. You got to find a new job. Hey, it's a great opportunity to go try something new. You have to, you're having to move, right? Well, how about if you find a place you really want to be? Mm-hmm. Rather than what you can afford. How can you find a place that will suit you better than the one that you had? And even people, there's a lot of people that are really scared right now because they've lost their jobs. I've been so independent for so long, I don't even know what it means to have a job, but, I know a lot of people that's security to them. Well, I could say on one hand, nothing's secure, but that makes them scared, right? Okay, nothing's going to not change, everything's going to change. Change is part of the dynamic of life. But if we just say instead, okay, now, what do you really want to do? Now's the time, really, it's a perfect opportunity. What do you really want to do? And let's come up with something that just really makes you want to get up every day.
Because, one of the things that you had put down here, and I was going to ask you, we'll go to the individual. So how can an average person access their creativity? No, I'll go here. You say that everyone is creative, and so I'm asking you, what does that mean for someone who thinks they're just average? And the reason I'm asking you that now is because we're talking about people who are facing, in some cases, really severe challenge. Whether it's from extreme weather and losing everything you have, or losing your job, or about to lose your job, or losing your house. So this, for me, is really a critical time for people to tap into that creativity, because it's like I said, in my intro, things that we're comfortable with are being taken apart, and so what we're being asked is to reassemble them in new ways. And so the one thing I'd like to just add before you answer the question is about how people get there, is to let go of expectations. You mentioned that earlier. For me, I have come to realize that everything that triggers me is around my expectation. I expect people to be certain ways, or systems to work certain ways, or things to be certain way, and that's what triggers me. And so I'm thinking my expectations were built on an old world that is dissolving, so the more that I can get comfortable with not having an attachment to an expectation, and when I get triggered, say, okay, I believe that it should be this way, but it's not. And so find some other way, and I have some examples, I won't use them, of how I can go into my place of peace around that. So for people who are really stretched right now, and they don't see that they have that creativity, maybe it hasn't been made evident, what would you say to them?
I'm going to take you on a little detour, and then if I get too far down the road, I want you to bring me back to this question, okay? And the reason why I'm taking you there, is because it's one of the major points that I want to make this evening. Okay. And it's something that's been coming back into my head, and the exact phrase is not quite here. Probably it's jettisoning the story, okay? Well, if we go back in history and we talk about, Western history, and, go back to the Greeks, let's just say. And the Greeks were great storytellers. You ever see that, the mask that's one side is it smiling and the other side it's or laughing, and one side it's sad, right? Mm-hmm. You've seen those masks, the theatrical masks, smiling mouths? Okay. And that is really what we inherited. We inherited this idea of story, of continuity, of linearity, of having a beginning, a middle, and an end, and that we have drama, okay? And that drama is like, if people don't have drama in their lives, they invent it. It's something I've noticed, If a baby falls down and lands on its bottom, it takes it a while to figure out what its emotions are and to cry. It doesn't really know to cry right away. You'll see it land and sits there and what should I do, right? I saw this hilarious video once on YouTube of this kid that was throwing a tantrum, and the parent had the camera in his hand, and he'd leave and go into the other room, and you'd see, and the kid disappears, right, because he's gone around the corner. The kid shuts up, walks around the corner as a toddler, throws the tantrum again. The parent moves the camera and moves into the other room, don't see the kid. Kid walks around the corner, starts throwing the tantrum again. He needed an audience, right? And so one of the things about story that we hold on to, sort of an old idea, that the fact that we have a story, the fact, and particularly a drama, makes us more real. Think about that for a minute. That makes us more real, makes us more important, right? It's linked to self-importance. One of the things that I've been working on all my life is dethroning self-importance. It's nearly impossible to do because we all have it. It's sort of like dethroning the ego, or, you can't actually get rid of it, but, let's get it out of control, out of the control seat. So this idea of story, and so when we come to a major crossroads in our lives, all of a sudden one story is ending, our story, right? Our concept of who we are, where we are in the universe, what value we have in society, what value we have within our family unit, all of this is based upon story. Now, Don Miguel Ruiz, who wrote the Four Agreements, talks about the mitote. And the mitote is agreements, we make agreements. And those agreements, what they mean by agreements is that we agree on what reality is, okay? First of all, how do we do that? Okay, we have first our internal dialogue. Our internal dialogue reinforces what reality is. We say, well, I like the color pink. I don't like the color blue, right? We say that to ourselves enough, so we believe that our preferences are reality, okay? We believe that, blue is bad, right, because we don't like it. And that becomes our reality. We reinforce that through also sharing it with other people and getting agreement from other people. So we all agree that money, for instance, has value. Now, who says that money has value? Even gold. We agree that gold has value. Well, who says it has value? This is what I call a kernel or a core concept. That kernel concept is something that if you change it, let's say if we decide tomorrow money has no value, all of us.
That may happen.
It's an extremely powerful thing. Okay, extremely powerful, extremely threatening to people, okay? People who, base their whole security, okay, based upon the fact that money has value. But if you change that concept, what's happening to us is that core things are being changed underneath us, so it feels like nothing, it's like an earthquake, right? And when it happens in our personal lives, suddenly we're like, oh, wait a minute, the earth is moving. Okay, well, it's been moving for a while. How do you survive that? How do you change that? Well, one of the things is to allow flexibility into your life.
Allow what?
You allow flexibility into your life.
Yes, okay,
you start with allowing yourself to be creative, allowing yourself to conceive of other things, allowing yourself to dare to dream. A lot of us, when we're comfortable, we're like sheep in a pasture or sheep waiting for slaughter, okay? We are no longer aware. And that means that we're comfortable, but a lot of people would rather have a familiar pain than anything else because they're familiar with it. It forms a world. And if suddenly they were relieved of that pain and it was replaced with something else, they might want it back. And it's amazing how that happens to people. Like they get into those relationships that are poisonous, and they keep on getting into them over and over again because in some way that represents reality to them. When I was a child, my mother was an early environmentalist, and she loved nature, sort of a nature girl, and she would allow us to go out and capture animals and bring them back to our house, and we keep in terrariums and try to feed them, and we had at any time a whole menagerie of animals in there. They had like frogs and toads and turtles and snakes, and we weren't afraid of anything. So I remember once we had this round glass terrarium, and there's this golden-eyed toad in this terrarium on the back porch. We had him on a table on the back porch. And I wanted to see his golden eyes, but he was turned around facing the other direction. So I do what any normal human being would do, because I couldn't go around the table. It was against the wall. Or against the window, I should say. I turned around the terrarium. And do you know the toad hopped at the speed backwards that I was moving it around? So what he was doing was keeping his view the same. Because the view was security to him. He was safe, even in that glass terrarium, because his view remained the same. And we will attempt to do that when change is imminent. We all have a tendency, because change is really scary. We are holding this reality in stasis by our attention, by our focus, by what we focus on and what we think. We hold it in stasis. So we really live in an ever-changing environment of which it's really scary to us, because we want stability, we want continuity, we want the story, we want things to be safe. And it's safe to our linear left mind if it's in continuity, it remains the same. But it's really flowing energy. So what we're doing is we're holding the illusion by trying to hold on to safety. Now,
I understand that. It takes courage. It takes courage for everyone now to look at what's happening. It's like, for me, this is a divine plan, an evolutionary plan that's unfolding, and this earth is going to be restored, and we have been invited to participate, and it means that the reality that we know is dissolving, and we have an opportunity to access something that I don't think any race before us has had the opportunity to access, which is to walk out of darkness. It's for all the people who have been in pain, who said, why me? All of those answers all of those questions in my mind or in my view are being answered right now. But it's about having the courage. It's like having your feet on two worlds, and it's about having the courage to take your foot off what you know and be willing to explore this new potential that's in front of us. And so for those people that are in that place of fear, who don't feel they have, let's say they had a job for 20 years and now it's gone, there is something more inside, but we haven't been trained, or we haven't been conditioned, or we haven't been led to believe that that's possible. So how do those people go in and they reach that part of them that is so amazing, so that they can bridge themselves to this new possibility?
Well, it's a redefinition of terms. It's really interesting, because when I wrote my book, I was getting more information as I wrote it, and I'd sit down, I'm like, okay, here's chapter 5, and it just flow out. One of the things that came to me, which is really amazing, and I did research on it, and I actually had read this years before, the Buddhists have this term called skillful and unskillful emotions. Skillful emotion, I've redefined those terms, but basically there is a skillful definition, or a skillful emotion that matches every unskillful emotion. So, for instance, anger could be in the unskilled emotion, reflected in the skilled version of it as excitement. So the emotion that you're having is actually just, if you think of it as just energy, okay? This is one way past what I'm talking about. There's two ways. One is play, which is another definition. You have to learn how to play. But the other way is to redefine your emotions. And so it takes us out of the fear area. If we say that what we are experiencing is fear, just like I said, the baby falls down on the ground on his bottom, right? It takes him a while to figure out, oh, I fell down, I hurt, therefore I must cry in order to get my mother to pick me up, okay? Mm-hmm. So that's a definition of terms. And after a while, you begin to, they don't really know what their emotions are until someone else defines them for them. So parents are constantly defining the world for their children. So socialization is a form of what they call socialization of children, is one of the ways to form agreements and to bring the world into a sort of common agreement about, oh, the sky is blue kind of thing. When you cry, you're sad. You know, there's this definitions. But if you apply a creative way of looking at your emotions, first of all, understanding that emotions are a form of energy. They are really our wealth. Think of them that way. That's an interesting way to look at them. That your real wealth is your emotions. Mm-hmm. Not your definition of them, but your energy. Mm-hmm. So if we take the unskillful emotion, fear, and we redefine it as excitement, doesn't it kind of feel the same? You know? It's kind of the same. You can go very quickly from fear to excitement. It's sort of like that adrenaline rush that, you know, extreme athletes get, you know, and they're addicted to it. And they have to do more and more extreme things because they like that rush of emotions, right? It's a zing, right? Why do people like to watch horror flicks? Because they get a zing of emotion. There's a tingle in there, right? And so that is our wealth. Now, learn how to take, because everything's energy, learn how to take your wealth, your personal wealth and emotion, of which you have a lot of, and transform it into something that creates something for you. So it's very easy to take fear and turn it into an excitement. And once you do that, then you're using an emotion that works for you. Here's an example. Let's say, for instance, you're on the road, and a car cuts you off, right? And you experience anger. And then he stops at a light in front of you and you decide that just to express your anger, you're going to ram into him. Okay? Now that's an unskillful emotion because it's taken over you. It's taken you over, and you're no longer able to channel that emotion to something that works for you because that guy's going to come back at you and get angry at you, right? So if you took that emotion of anger and you say, well, okay, I'm deciding to redefine this, and I'm going to transform it into a skillful emotion. I'm going to channel that anger, and I'm going to turn it into something creative. I'm going to take all my anger, and I'm saying, the very first thing in transformation is awareness. Okay, you have to know what you got before you can transform it into something else. And creativity really is just transforming energy. All we're doing is we're taking a certain thing and we're transforming it into something else. That's all creativity is, just transformation. And all we have to do is say, okay, that anger emotion, that emotion that up till now I defined as anger, I'm going to turn it to something else, and I'm going to make it something that works for me. So what an artist does, or a pure creative, or a conscious creative, what I've defined as conscious creative, because what artists are, and then people that have mastered that, and then they take the pure creativity and they do applied creativity with it, you know. What they do is they're masters at sustaining their passion. They're masters at channeling their passion, their energy, sexual energy or any other kind of energy of motion or energy of thought, whatever. They channel that into something that they create with. So that's what we're going to go to. This is where we're going. And so practice it. You know, find little ways to be creative. Find little ways to sort of dethrone your self-importance a little bit, and you'll get a zing out of it. I guarantee you. I mean, it's amazing how you can take that energy. They say, the Toltecs say, meaning Don Miguel Ruiz and all the others in that lineage, or that philosophy, say that our self-importance, which is the thing that suffers in times of change, because self-importance, or ego, needs things to remain the same. It's sort of like I think of it as kind of like, autistic children, how they can't have any change in their environment, right? Well, the left brain is kind of like that. It can't stand change because it's so insecure. And so we all have this sort of like neurotic side to us that has been programmed into us. And what we need to do is, instead of fighting it, we need to work with it. So we need to dethrone it.
Befriend it.
Befriend it, right. We need to dethrone it from being in control. It's our personal assistant. It's never more than that. It's not in charge. Mm-hmm. Your spirit or your left or your right brain should be your creative brain, your creative self, your excited, impassioned self should be the one that's in charge. And that will tell you true every time. Your heart will tell you true. And then your left brain, the one that's data-related and sort of computer-like and neurotic, if it's left in charge, it can then be the personal assistant. So it's the one that says, okay, well, your spirit says, you need to go to Hawaii, right? Well, that's what your spirit said. Now your left brain helps to accomplish it. Mm-hmm. So it will say, well, let's see, I need to go make arrangements on the plane. I need to make sure I have my identification. I have to make sure that I, water the plants and feed the cat or get the cat taken care of while I'm gone. So it's the personal assistant of the right brain.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
So it's all a matter of really loving it all and finding out how to work with it. Rather than fighting it or even thinking there's anything dark to overcome. If we simply lighten up, it completely changes things right then.
Mm-hmm. It's like you said earlier, and I know Dr. Dean Schrock said this too, go find your joy. That was his prescription, go fishing for patience. Go find what brings you joy in your life. And so the more that we do that we're doing things that we love and, we're being true to ourselves, which is very healthy for the heart, then, I believe the creativity, it just shows up. It's not even something that I have to go looking for. It's just like, oh, wow, thank you. That's a great idea. And then you just go and follow through. So,
now, you mentioned earlier. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
You mentioned earlier, and I got off the track a little bit. Hold that question. When you were saying how does the ordinary person find the creativity, my contention is that we are all innately creative. We all have different kinds of creativity, just as we all have different kinds of intelligence. But we all are innately creative. By nature of being human, we are creative. We have unlearned it because of our socialization. We've been taught that that's not profitable to be creative, that it will put you outside of society if you're too creative, because, you're too weird, that, we've been taught not to be creative, but we are innately creative. Know that you're innately creative and trust in it. I know that's tough, involves faith, but if you don't think you're creative, just say, oh, that's what I've been told, and that's not true. Mm-hmm. And once you say that it's not true, not to say you get angry at the people that told you that, or, they heard you singing and said, oh, yeah, you're a horrible singer, or you can't draw worth dang, say, oh, okay, that's not true. You start to unravel all of that netting that's held you back. And when you unravel it piece by piece, you start to discover joy and energy and passion and excitement and a new way of being on your way. And that is all fun. Think of it as fun.
And that's when we stop holding on to those expectations we have that life should be a certain way, because I would like to say that how life has been up to now has served us for that period of our evolutionary process, and that right now there's a door open to anything that you can dream possible, or anything that you can put enough clarity and emotion, passion, desire, focus, attention, that it will come, it will find you. I mean, we don't even have to look for it. That's how amazing and how powerful we are when we open up, when we, allow that beautiful energy that's everywhere to flow through us.
One of the elements of the story that we have been dealing with is this idea of polarity. And what I see is that, all stories are going to end. And so when the story ends, when our personal story ends, when our global story ends, when our societal level story ends and a global level story ends, we're at a completely new beginning, but it's not a beginning of another linearity. We are exiting the story entirely, which is an extremely powerful thing. And when we exit the story entirely, we're going to be completely in the now. Now, what does that mean? That means we're also exiting judgment, as you said. We are exiting polarity. We're exiting all the concepts that have held such power over us. Because a concept, when you have a personal concept, it doesn't have much power when you first think it or when you first let it in. And again, all those concepts are out there. They're actually things that can inhabit your mind and can take control in terms of forming your personal view of the world or whatever, and then societal view of the world. But when it's in agreement, it has more power, right? So we have this societal agreement of history and a linear kind of view of the world view of the world, and we have a concept of polarity as well. So polarity means that I think Jim Self said this was really interesting. He says we're leaving a world where we really have no choice. We only are reactive. We can only react to something. Well, I like this or I don't like this. I prefer peace over war, or I prefer war over peace, or whatever. That's reactive. What he's saying we're moving into is a fourth dimensional power of choice. Now, there's two levels to the fourth dimension, the lower astral level, which is sort of all full of story and sort of the place where, should we say, the ghosts dwell, this sort of trapped energy, the energy that is stuck in a story and a description. And then the higher fourth dimension, which is close to the fifth dimension, which just has to do with love. Once you get to that level, we're sort of dropping all the old descriptions and the idea of linearity and the idea of time. I wrote a blog called The Beginning of the End of Time, and this concept, it's one of the essays that in the book Celestial Navigation. The concept, the idea of this is that when we finally get to this point, well, time has been sped up at exponential rates in the last few years. It seems like every year it's faster, and every month it's faster, and then every day it's faster. But when we finally get to that point where time has disappeared, which we're at right now, it's sort of like holding on in terms of a concept, but it's actually disappeared. We are at the new beginning of something, but it's not a linear beginning anymore.
I agree. Yeah, and here's the thing, is when you talk about the time, if you look at the 9 levels of creation of consciousness, we're in the 9th level. Every level below that is 20 times shorter. So this year, we will experience as much as we have in like the last lifetime. So it's like time is collapsing into the now where spirit is. All of this is part of the illusion. And when you talk about, I forget the words you said, but it's not the beginning of a new linearity or a new polarity. We are ending, and we are going to start year 0. That's where we're going. We're going to year 0. All the world ages up until whenever the shift is, and nobody knows exactly when that will be, but I believe that the template will be set in place. Like, I believe whatever's happening in the collective at the end of December 2012, that's why that date is important, is I feel the frequency of where the collective is, whether we're in our heart or we're still in our story and in our drama, that will significantly impact how year zero starts. I don't know if that resonates.
Exactly. And we're giving a chance now to exit the karma too. The karma is just story. It's sort of like, I wrote another blog again. It's everything that was in my blog that I wrote in for the 2 years after I wrote the first book became part of Celestial Navigation. Celestial Navigation is a collection of essays, and those essays are accompanied by my paintings. So, the paintings over the last 15 years or whatever occupy that book as well. But this one blog post that I wrote had to do with, once what were we talking about? I forgot. I was going to
karma. We're exiting the karma is our story.
Yeah. When we get rid of the story, it's really interesting because I remember. It was called Time to Start to Stop something. Time to Stop Time to Start Dancing. And what I saw, see these things in my mind's eye, and what I saw is that everybody was dancing like in a group, and they were all on stage, and they were all wearing masks. And so they were theatrical people. They had put on these masks to assume this role, and they were dancing their role on stage. That's karma. That's how we have, taken on different roles in different lifetimes. At one point we might be the murderer, and the next point we're the victim, okay? But we basically are all actors, and we forgot that we put on these masks, and we forgot there were actors playing these roles. Like I said, you don't know what emotion you have when you're, 2 years old and you fall on your bottom. You learn to identify that emotion. You learn to see how people react to you, right? So that's what we learn throughout life. But now we're given a chance to actually exit the karma as well. And once we exit the karma, that means we don't have to go through this dance anymore. We can wake up and realize we've been acting it out. Now, I think a lot of people came here to experience the drama, and they forgot, and they got caught in this loop, the karmic loop, over and over again, and they don't get out of it, right? Well, this is the time period when we actually can leave it. Individually, all we are responsible for is our own individual evolution. It's overwhelming to think we're uplifting the whole planet, which we really do because we do it on the etheric level. We do it when we're asleep. I'm actually, for years, when I go to sleep, in my dream state, I'm either being taught something or I'm teaching something. And that's been going on for a long, long time for me, and I'm aware of it. I even have these whole things that I go through, initiation processes where I go to the next level. If everybody goes through that hole in the wall, they'll be at the next level. But that's what's happening in our dreams. So it's happening whether we will it with our conscious minds or not. So it's important to understand that there's something else that's going on and that we are latched into it at all points. And it's time to lighten up a little bit. Because if you conceptualize this too much, you're going to be back where we were in the left brain stuff, where we're, fighting the war on terror, which is an absolute ridiculous thing to try to fight a war to begin with, because then you're just reinforcing polarity and opposition and resistance, and what you resist becomes stronger, So there's no point in fighting anything. And the idea is to work with it.
I would just say it's really interesting because this came to me before our call, and I'd like to bring it up now because you brought in the word terrorism. What I would like to offer our listeners is this, that when each of us find the courage or the peace or the methodology to still our own terrorist inside of us, the one that, beats us up all the time, tells us we're not good enough, we'll never get it, it'll never happen. When enough of us are willing to see that is the part of us that, has evolved and that we have the ability to rest it, then we will have peace in the world. Because in my view, the outer is a reflection of the inner. Now, some people may agree with that, some people may not. But in my own personal life, when something shows up in the outer world, I go inside and say, okay, that's showing me an opportunity that I have in this moment to be more love or do whatever I'm called to do. And so this terrorism thing is just a reflection of the terrorist in each of us. We're either terrorizing ourselves or terrorizing our kids or our animals or somebody. You know, it's not good enough. We judge, we criticize, we blame, we shame. That's all part of it. And I really
you're
think
absolutely
that
right.
when we are willing to accept that is showing, those people are showing us the part of us that are terrorists. I mean, this is part of the expectation. Oh, I'm a good person. Don't tell me that I have terrorism in me. Well, you know what? At the end of the day, we all do. And it's nothing to be ashamed of. That's part of letting this old reality go, where we've been brainwashed and conditioned and probably had experiences that triggered anger in us. And, you know, it's like, it's so time to just let that part of the story go. So if I have a terrorist inside, I'm going to love it. I'm going to love it back
comes back
to the
the
light.
sense of, it comes back to
you
the sense
and I
of
are so on the same page. You and I are so on the same page.
I know. Well, it comes back to, you know, what don't you accept in yourself, you know? And the thing that's really, I'll give people a little exercise that's really effective. There's two exercises that I want to give people because I was in the New York City area at 9/11, and you know, I was actually working in the city, and you know, so I had to see this all the time, and actually that was a very interesting experience, and I was very glad I was there, practically at ground zero, because I got to experience some amazing things, and what I experienced was the opposite of what most of the United States experienced, you know. But what I will say is that it's really important to sit down with your shadow self. Now, this is two exercises I'm going to give you, and this is, I know people go through panic attacks, and I'm going to give you what to do in a panic attack. And how to manage that and how to turn it into something else. And again, it comes back to this idea that everything inside of you is energy. Everything, from your big toe to your emotions, your thoughts and your emotions. And they're all interconnected, you know, because it, you know, I'll tell you about creative manifestation in a moment, but basically all you have to do is when you're in a panic attack, the first thing to do is control your breathing, right? So the first thing to do is to exhale as much as you can until, think of a, you know, if you ever taken a balloon and sucked all the air out of it, you know, and you think of your lungs like that. You're going to exhale all your lungs, right? Now, by the sheer nature of the way your lungs are built, the vacuum in your lungs will force you to bring in more air than you're used to doing, okay? So one of the things that happens in a panic attack is that you lose oxygen, okay? You breathe shallow, okay? So you want to breathe more. But the way to do it is to start with the exhale. So you exhale all the air out, and you visualize that balloon that you've just pulled all the air out of. That's your lungs. And by nature, your lungs will then bring in a lot of air. Now, that's number one. Second thing to do is when you're in a panic attack is sit in meditation. Now, the whole thing about meditation, real esoteric meditation is not about thinking about something. It's about not thinking. When you get to the not thinking self, you're in your creative self, right? You're in your beingness. You're not in your doingness. You're in your beingness. So when you learn to meditate, and maybe you're not used to meditation, but even if you're not, you can sit quietly and maybe focus on a candle flame or something like that. Will give you something to look at when you're meditating. So you have something to occupy your mind, but you're not thinking about the candle flame. You're just looking at it move. Okay. So you sit in meditation, and maybe after a while, looking at the candle flame, you close your eyes and you focus on your body, like where is the emotion in your body? So you're feeling, panic attack, and you're feeling really tight in your throat, or you're feeling grief, or you're feeling lost, or you're feeling whatever the emotion is. Focus on it and be present with it. When you're truly present and you feel the emotion as an energy in your body. Focus on where it is in your body, the physical location, and then follow it, because it will move out of your body. It will move out of your body. What you've done when you focus your attention on something and you're present with it and you're accepting of it and you're not resisting it, you allow it then to flow out of your body. No longer is it trapped energy, which feels bad. It's flowing energy, which feels good. Now, that can give you a moment of relief, right?
Mm-hmm.
The next thing to do is, when you're a little bit calmer, you sit down in a meditation and you invite your shadow self to sit down next to you. Your shadow self, according to Carl Jung, is the self that you don't accept. Everything about you, oh, I'm fat, or I can't get a job, or no one loves me, or da-da-da-da-da. That's your shadow self. And it's formed out of opinions and thoughts that you've held for years. And it's got an emotional thing. And it's actually an entity, if you think of it that way. It has a personality, it has a history, it has a story connected with it. It has a message to tell you in actuality. And so the thing to do is, instead of shutting it away in the closet and ignoring it and saying, I don't have that shadow self, I'm only a good person, or it only comes back out on Saturdays, but on some days it's...
Mm-hmm.
So, you admit to its existence, and you say, hey, you know what? I want you to come down and sit next to me and tell me, what is your version of my reality? Now, I have done this, not necessarily meditation, but one time when I was heavily emoting, and sometimes it'll last for like days. I'll do like a personal retreat. It might be 7 days long, 3 days long, or whatever. And I actually invite my shadow self to speak through me. And what it will say will be things like, whatever, it's my greatest fears, my greatest, issues, whatever. And it speaks through me, and I allow it to express itself. Now, I've also done that through art, right? I'm fortunate to be an artist, and I tell people this in my book, Pearl of Mind, The Art of Creativity, that ability to get it out in your art is so transformative. And this is the thing that I really am here to teach, is that creativity is the thing that rescues you every single time. I don't care how you do it. If you express your emotions, I do my emotions when I have emotions, I can't paint it out. I can't do it in multimedia or video or audio or any of the mediums that I use. I use poetry. And my poems are terrible and beautiful at the same time, because I'm expressing the worst things that I can imagine. And those things need to come out of me. And when they come out, they're out of me on paper. And so this practice of going into yourself, inviting your shadow self to sit down next to you and tell you everything, you allow that energy then to flow out, right? And so what I did first time I did this, this is after 9/11, I invited my shadow self to sit down next to me and tell me all its fears and everything that made it real. Remember, I said we become real through our drama, through our emotions. Mm-hmm. It had a reality of its own, and it was an entity, right? And so I then hugged it. And, of course, I'm doing this in my mind, and I discovered that its energy flowed back into me. And then I became integrated. I was not two selves. I was one self. And I've had to do this several times. One of the things I found about that first time when I did it, that shadow self was 5 years old. And it was not a terrible monster like I believed it to be. It was a 5-year-old child that had been hurt. And so this is the thing we need to integrate. And we can do that through art. We can do it through poetry. We can do it through meditation, which is an art form. We can do it through athletics, which helps us, in terms of oxygen in our blood and things like that. All of these things are the things that will rescue us every single time.
Mm-hmm. Even journaling, it's just energy.
Oh, absolutely.
What you refer to as an entity is just energy. And so when we write, whether it's poetry or journaling or however it is, getting it out, I believe, is good. It's good for the body, it's good for the mind, it's good for the soul. And I also think even creating what it is that you want to have in your life, it's good to write it, because I feel that when we put it on paper, it takes on another energy form for the universe to start working with. So instead of it just being an energy inside as a thought, now it's on a piece of paper, it's into solid form, so now the universe has non-physical and physical. So I just think that writing, is just such a great way to release, to cleanse, to let our creativity flow. I just think it has a lot of benefits that it offers us. And the other thing I want to go back to about the entity is when you befriend, that's the separation. We see the dark as one way and us another, but it's really all part one. And
well,
that's
it comes back
really
to this
key.
core concept of duality as being polarity. See, duality, people talk about, oneness, this, oneness, that. Well, we're here in duality, right? And that's why I say, let's have fun with it. What's wrong with duality? It's when it becomes polarity that we have a problem. Look, I love the fact that I'm female and I'm attracted to men. Hey, this is a great thing, They're not like me. That's why I'm attracted to them. I have an interest in being a duality type of thing. I have an interest in experiencing duality. I'm sure that's why I came here. I'm not in denial of being here on this earth. I'm in acceptance of it. And that, when you accept, it's like another thing. People, when they say, well, I don't know how to be creative, or I need the right space, or I need the right materials. I'm like, go ask a child whether he needs the right materials, the right time, the right space. They are the uber creative souls in this universe. They have not learned not to be creative, and so they don't have to form a committee decision about anything that they do. They don't wait to do it. When do they do it? They do it now, right? They're not going to wait to do anything, and that's why we as adults we forget the joy of creativity, and we forget that creativity is the thing that saves us every time. Every time we come to this impasse, and it's not an impasse, every time we come to this jumping off point, and it is scary, but remember, fear is also excitement. And we can transform anything by how we perceive it. Up until now, I think the only way to deal with anything was to change our reaction to what we are seeing. So we can't change the events, at least at this point, most of us. But we can change how we react to the events. So, it's like the glass is half empty, half full, to use a commonly used metaphor. But basically, have you ever noticed that when you're in love, the whole world looks different? Well, that's because the world is based upon our emotions. It's not based upon empirical facts, because there is no such thing. The brain cannot perceive directly. The senses deliver impressions to the brain that the brain then has to sort out into what it remembers.
It takes 1/5 of a second. It's very fast.
It's very, very fast, but it's constantly doing comparison and contrast to history. Now, we will have the capability to deal with things directly, deal with energy directly. But up until now, we've been sort of stuck in the 3D concept of things, in this sort of heavy polarity and heaviness, and, and only a few people have achieved a type of enlightenment. But I can tell you that one way to get there is to realize is through art, through some kind of creative activity. And when I say art, I'm just talking about pure creativity, because once you get in the practice of that, you can transfer those skills to anything that you work with. You can transfer, but being an artist is really a way of thinking. It's a way of approaching the world. And the way of approaching the world as an artist is everything that is in the world, everything that happens to you is either a tool or a toy. Now, when you look at that and you say, okay, well, I had my mother died, okay, which is true. My mother has died, and so art comes out of that experience. And that experience just transforms. I mean, the art transforms the experience. And now what I have is a richness from that experience. Mm-hmm. Instead of grief, which is a feeling of loss, I have a feeling of wealth. So I've transformed that for me. Mm-hmm. At a really base level. Yeah. So anything. I mean, lose your job. It's cause for celebration. I mean, it can be seen that way. But we have to remember, too, it's kind of like, I've spent the last few years getting really, really light. Like, I've never been a very materialistic person. But we really can't go through, everything that you own is a type of responsibility, and it's a drag on you. You have to at least decide how to dispose of it.
It becomes a distraction. It's a distraction.
They're all like children, right? Saying "mommy, mommy, mommy," 24/7 during the day. So remember that your possession, you may not be able to get through this change with all your possessions, and that's what's really important. Is to remember your possessions and your thoughts and your emotions are not you. That's a really heavy concept for a lot of people. I'm like, well, how do you define yourself? Well, I am a healthy person. I'm blah blah blah. All those there's all definitions. They're just thoughts that you had. Who are you? At the base of it, you cannot define yourself. And when you can't define yourself, it's not. I would say art is not it's not about expressing who you are. What's really important, when you get past that point, we have to express the dysfunctional, which is what, art therapy is about, when you are talking about who you're not. Mm-hmm. That's when you're really getting creative, okay? Who am I not? I'm not interested in who I am, who I think I am, because I'm not that anymore. That's who I was a minute ago. Who am I not? That's when you're an explorer of the unknown. That's when you're really on the path. Because expressing who you were, because it's always who you were, it's not who you are. You can't express who you are, because when you express it, it's always already passed, right? So you can't really express who you are.
You also can't express, but it's what we are, and also it goes the same thing to what I am not.
Exactly.
Because this physical world is all illusion.
Yeah. But think about how then when you open to who you're not, right, then you're like that fan that's opened up. Now you're able to receive a lot more, because everything that's possible is already there.
But the thing is, there's a trigger point. There's a trigger point for humans, I observe, there's something there's a step, I believe, that a human has to experience in order for them to be able to open their mind to what you and I are talking about. There's something that has to shift inside them. It's not something, I don't believe, that comes from outside. It's like, because I know that there are people I talk to who would not even attempt. I mean, they shut down as soon as you talk about these kinds of things. They haven't reached the point yet where they're capable of being open. And so, maybe with the high vibration light that's coming in now, more people will have that trigger inside them turned on, so that they'll at least want to start asking deeper questions or entertaining the possibility that, institutions, people that they believed in are not what they believe them to be. I mean, that's really key right now. And, it's like when we look at all the people that are suffering, there's so many people on the path that have projects they want to bring forward, and the money just doesn't seem to be there at this moment. And I'm thinking that if more and more people could find their voice to speak up, from the heart about world peace, that we could free up money to bring to correction everything that needs to be worked on, the technology. I mean, even just being in a peaceful state. I think every person, Hugh said that he was disabled. I mean, I believe that there's a way for people to be able. It doesn't matter what happened to your body. There's a way for that to be brought back into harmony because it's out of harmony, right? And I believe that when we choose world peace, when we find our voice, the money will be made available because we're going to be in harmony and balance. And that's where all of this potential is just going to be like a floodgate that opens, and what the technology, the information, everything we need to restore the balance and harmony, whether it's in our bodies or in the environment or in the technology we use that's safe. I think it's just there waiting for us to make this shift so that it can find us. Once our vibration is high enough, it will find us. But it's
yeah,
the waking up.
It's on the individual. I mean, I know what you're saying about people not being able to make that first step. And in the research for my own book, I discovered, I think it was Bruce Lipton, who wrote
Biology of Belief, Spontaneous Evolution.
Mm-hmm, yeah. And there is it's an interesting thing that was said, and they basically say that when you're in fear and stress, high beta wave activity, which is a rapid beta waves in the brain, is like the sort of stress-induced, totally efficient kind of person where I'm like, okay, I'm getting out of bed at like 6:15 sharp. I'm going to have my breakfast by such and such. I'm going to get this much done during the day. That is actually stress. And when we put ourselves, and most people are in that kind of brainwave most of the time, right? And increasingly so in this time period. That's one thing. Time is speeding up, and it's actually a type of frenzy or insecurity that we got to do more in increasingly faster terms, and we got to do 3 jobs instead of 1 job because they fired everybody else, and I'm the only one left, and if I don't do this job, all of that is stress. Okay, stress shuts down the higher creative centers of the brain. So what are you working on? You're working in the lower reptilian mammalian brain. Okay, you're not, and I'm not a scientist, so I just know that the creative centers of the brain, the blood supply is shut off, which means that you're not thinking there. Now, through another book that I read recently, it was really interesting, talks about the role of pituitary and the pineal gland in the brain. Yes. Now, the pituitary gland is what's called the seventh seal, which is the seventh chakra. The pineal gland is the third eye, and the seventh seal, or the pituitary gland, is dead center in your brain between the 2 hemispheres of the brain. The pineal gland is sort of more behind it, more to the back, okay? They're directed at each other. The pineal gland is the master gland for the body. One of the reasons why you shouldn't be using fluoridated anything is that the pineal gland builds because of the brain barrier is broken with fluoride, and it coats the pineal gland, so it actually prevents it from properly functioning, which causes a crust around the pineal gland. I had a doctor who did a lot of study of this, and what he said is the pineal gland gets so encrusted that it's no longer able to control the rest of the glands of the body, i.e. the body just starts to break down. One of the things that the pineal gland does is it tells the body to either grow or not to grow, and it tells it to be, to develop or to go into fear mode, where it shuts things down. It stops the replication of cells. So you end up with disease and stuff like that in old age. So let's just say, for instance, you get to the point where you've actually cleared a lot of your emotional body. The pineal gland starts to clear, okay? But it still is in charge of telling you what is reality, and it will only accept certain information. Now, that information is coming from the pituitary gland. Both of these glands are ductless glands. The pineal gland will only accept certain information, so it kind of instructs the pituitary gland to only receive certain amount of information. Remember, the pituitary gland faces up. Basically, it's receiving from, sort of the etheric level or spiritual level or whatever. So it is receiving information, but it can only receive certain kinds of information as per instructed by the pineal gland. What's happening now, or what can happen now, but you have to instruct it to do so, is that you're ready to receive more information, that you're open to this information, and then you want the pituitary gland to open up. Now, you've seen this thing in the mandalas and stuff like that, when you look at they talk about the lotus and, how all these 1,000-leaf lotus, and you look at the chakra system, and you see all these different lotuses, pictures with different petals on them, and as you get further and further up on the chakra system, they get more and more petals, and you get to the 7th chakra, it's 1,000 petals or whatever. Yeah. Well, the pituitary gland opens up like a flower, and it is able, again, I talk about the brain as being like a shortwave radio. When I go into meditation, I receive a lot of information. And when I used to go into meditation, I'd receive like snippets of people's conversations. I could do remote viewing. I mean, all this stuff's all possible. Mm-hmm. Well, it's only possible because I didn't tell myself it wasn't. Okay? So I'm able to have that possibility because I didn't instruct myself that it wasn't possible. Mm-hmm. Now, the pituitary gland, once it opens up, can now receive more information, and you have to, the only way to get the pineal gland to allow the pituitary to open up is you have to tell it that more is possible than it's ever believed, that you have to tell yourself over and over again that you're unlimited. And so once you start to tell yourself that, you can say it out loud, you can say, I am unlimited. And once you do that, all of a sudden you are what you tell yourself you are. I told myself I was an artist long before I was one. I told myself I was a designer long before I was one. I told myself I was a teacher long before I was one. And as I told myself that, I became that. And so you become what you tell yourself. We know this with children. If you tell children that they're bad, they will be bad. Mm-hmm. If you tell them they're good, they will be good. It's amazing. They respond to your expectations.
They do. As we have experiments, too, that prove that.
Yeah. So you can become whatever you want. If you tell yourself you're not creative, you will not be creative. You will echo, your experience outside will echo what's inside. If you tell yourself the world is a dangerous place.
The key is to focus on what it is that we do want. That's another shift in how we exist in each moment, is where our attention goes, that energy flows, and it brings whatever the energy has the power to bring it into form. So when we stay focusing on what we do want, then we attract more of what we like. And when we give our attention to what we don't want, then it's all us. The power of the universe flows through us, and we haven't been taught that, but we're learning it now. That's part of the awakening up and learning to master the energy so that you have a life that you love. And when things go off the rails, own them.
Yeah, I mean, Jim Self said it. He said in the future world it will be 100% about you and 100% about everyone else. And the way I translate that, and because I have my own way of seeing this, what my vision is that everyone becomes fully evolved creatively. So that means that's going to change. Organizations won't look the same. We won't have the same way of governance. We won't have leaders. There won't be any leaders. There'll be people who come in and out of maybe, having more knowledge than someone else, or knowing how to organize people, or, blah, blah, blah. But everybody will be creatively empowered. That means they're all independently thinking, oh, my gosh, how are you going to have a government with that? Everybody suddenly wakes up to the fact they all have different realities, okay? How can you have anything that even looks like this, okay? But that would change all of society. So that's my vision. I envision, to come full circle to what we're talking about, that people will become creatively empowered. And the way I translate what Jim Self says when he says 100% about us and 100% about you and about everyone else, is that what I believe I came here at this time because this is the time when I could be most effective. Okay, this is the time when everything that's happened in my life comes to a crucial point, and I can put it all together, all my teaching skills, all my coaching skills, all my skills in business, all my skills in art, all my ability with creativity, all my brainstorming ability, all my visionary skills, my ability to write, my ability to speak and talk, and all of that's come to at a crucial point right now, right? And it's because
we have 1 minute left, Aliyah. We have 1 minute left, and we're going to be shut off. Okay.
Okay, I have learned to sing, so my vision is that everyone, when we learn this, we will be as if the birds we'll all be birds that have suddenly learned to sing.
Very nice. And that voice was there all along. It's just about having the will, because this is a free will, what we get to focus on the good things, and then that's what we're going to have more of in our life. Anyway, we have run out of time. This is amazing, Paul. It was fabulous. I am so, so happy that you took the time to be with us. I hardly even got to ask any questions. It was just such a great conversation, and I hope that a lot of people will listen. I know there's a lot of good wisdom here. So, Aliyah, thank you so much. I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening. I want to thank everyone who called in, everyone who listened to our show and who will listen to our show. Just if you feel moved later tonight, go visit the events page at Free to Be Wealthy and tune into that heart-connected meditation tonight. Remember, the greatest love of all is in this, with us all, and within us all. And I picked up a great phrase last week: bloom where you are planted each moment and shine your light so that you can live the life that you're truly meant to live. So God bless. Good night to everyone. Thank you for calling. And Aliyah, I'd really like to stay in touch with you. I think we have some great things that will find us in the future. Absolutely.
Yeah, make sure.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay.
Okay, good night, Aliyah. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.